Welcome to High Infidelity, the best cheating videos on YouTube. If you enjoy this content, remember to subscribe and turn on notifications. Now let's get into the video.
Nuclear vengeance on a cheating fiancé. It has clearly been many years after the occurrence, and I have practically never informed anyone in my new life about it. Tonight, I'm going to drink some fine wine and let my fingers do the talking. I believed I found the perfect lady. We met in our final year of college. We met at a party and clicked right away. She was a stunning blonde with sun-kissed complexion who might have passed for a model. She was nice, sensitive, sympathetic, a wonderful listener, and had a busy life with many friends like Kate Upton. She loved my friends, and it was amazing how our friend circles melded throughout the 3 years we knew each other. Several of our buddies started dating. It was some of the most enjoyable periods of my life. I was pursuing a postgraduate degree in finance, and she had a degree in contractual law. This is just to state that we were successful in our own right. But I'm no slouch when it comes to appearance, 5'11", 190 pounds, and enjoyed going to the gym. I wasn't a great athlete, but let's just say I was strong. But I was slash and pretty timid, and I hadn't had many previous relationships before meeting her. We were smitten the first time we met. We spoke all night the first night. Then it progressed to daily texting slash phone calls, weekly dates, and finally, after a year when I started working at my new job, she moved in. I adored her family, and she adored me. Mostly her mother, for her father was aloof, as he was to everyone. It had been a whirlwind romance. I proposed to her after 2.5 years of lovely abroad holidays, hiking expeditions, and luxury vacations. Yes, she said. I was completely ecstatic. She was in charge of all wedding preparations. We were chatting about our future plans, such as purchasing a house, having children, going on family trips together, and other similar things. Then something occurred. She seems a little distant one evening when we both returned home to our flat. I had fly lie. Believe I recognized it immediately away since we were usually quite loving to one another. This happened roughly once a week for the first month after the proposal. Then it became more regular. I would have been none the wiser if it hadn't been for the fact that I used to watch a lot of Reddit on YouTube. So I waited and watched. These periods of ignoring me would only last a couple of hours before she was back to normal. However, after 6 months, wedding a year, she was like this virtually every night. That intimacy was still fantastic. Her relationship with her parents was still strong, but over Thanksgiving at her parents' house in Louisville, Kentucky. We lived just north of Washington, D.C. She was cold to me in front of her mother. Her mother, on the other hand, was a keen observer. I could hear them arguing as she dragged her daughter away to talk to her. They returned to the rest of the family and continued on as if nothing had happened after some passionate but muted statements. I assumed I'd question her about it later, so I did. She was unwilling to address it and urged me to wait until we got home to do so. I accepted because I adored her and believed we could overcome any obstacle. Her mother was a more mature version of herself. The same startling appearances, just a few grays in her long, thick blonde hair. This will be crucial later. When I got home, I questioned her about it, but she refused to talk about it. After being pressured for a week, she eventually admitted that a guy at her workplace was attempting to get to know her better. She wanted to be forthright, so she handed me her phone, and as I flipped through it, I realized that all of the texts that would have occurred during the period she was withdrawing from me had been deleted. The texts included nothing obscene. However, because we shared the same phone plan, I went through her phone settings and activated her locator. And I honestly believed that would convince me that she was not doing anything wrong. Was I mistaken? She had a workplace Christmas party the weekend following Thanksgiving. I had intended to go, but I became ill with food illness and had to cancel. She had a girlfriend pick her up from our place since they were going to drink a lot and had a DD for the evening. We had planned to stay out all night, so I told her to have a good time and I'd see her in the morning. So as I was sick and hardly able to get off the toilet for more than 30 minutes, I grabbed my phone and tracked her whereabouts. It began as a restaurant, then as the location of the corporate party, and finally as a bar. None of this concerned me until I noticed her phone hang up at a downtown hotel. I was miserable in more ways than 3 at this point. My butt, mouth, and now soul have all been projectile vomited out. At 2 a.m., I eventually fell asleep owing to tiredness. I awakened at 7 a.m. to find her still at the motel. She eventually returns home at lunchtime and I am on T. He meant. She adores me, and I inquired about the previous night without stating anything about knowing her whereabouts. She mentions the restaurant, the party, and the bar, but then claims to have gone to her girlfriend's place to crash for the evening. Start with a falsehood. For the following 3 months, she must begin working 3 to 4 days a week later and later. As I begin to question her about it, she becomes very defensive. When her fiancé didn't arrive home till late one evening, I spoke with her mother. When I confronted her mother about the Thanksgiving chat, she stated that she suspected her daughter was leaving our relationship based on how she interpreted her daughter's body language. She also stated that her daughter was growing increasingly distant from her during their weekly texting talks. With all of this conjecture going on in my head, and I kept it to myself. 2 weeks later, at work, I was assigned a new project that would need me to fly to the Midwest Monday through Friday for the following 5 weeks, beginning in 2 weeks. It came with a raise in pay, and when I told my fiancée about it, she was overjoyed. I didn't believe she was delighted for the same reasons I was. As a result, I went online and purchased 4 motion-activated spy cameras for my flat. I placed one in the living room/entryway, one in the kitchen, one in our bedroom, and one in our hallway. They were tiny and linked to the internet through a covert network, so they could not be detected on the Wi-Fi network. I password-protected the cameras and waited. She had girlfriends over the first 2 evenings of my first week out and never worked late. On the 3rd night, a man arrived. I was furious. I was in my hotel room yelling at the monitor and calling her every name in the book. They went all the way, first on the sofa, then in our bed. She bent over backwards for him in ways I had no idea were possible. Worst of all, as I was watching them put it on, I called her to ask how her day went. When she hears her phone ring, she raises her hand to tell him to stop and answers the phone. I inquire as to why she is breathing heavily, and she responds that she is in the gym working out. She returns to doing the dirty as soon as the call is ended. When I arrived home Friday evening, I ignored her and went straight to bed, then woke up early Saturday to go riding. I was so outraged that I didn't know I'd ridden my bike more than 50 miles from our apartment. I had previously ridden my bike for 30 kilometers, but on that particular day, I covered 105.6 miles. I bathed after returning home, quite fatigued. Then she and I went out that evening, had a good time with our pals, and drank LOT. It's a breakup intimacy when the person you're breaking up with is unaware. I was exploding on the inside. Heartbreak, hatred, and sentiments of betrayal surged about in my thoughts and heart. She, who used to be so attentive, was completely unaware of everything. It hurt so badly because I adored her. I eventually confided in one of our common acquaintances, who informed me that they had all been aware of it for months. It all felt terrible for me. I was ultimately informed, but no one ever said anything to me again. As a result, they no longer invite us to join them on their outings. I hadn't realized it before, but they had been inviting me less and less during the previous 3 months. So I decided to attempt to win her back. And the next weekend I arranged the entire weekend as a complete weekend of treating her in every way. I wined and dined her, pampered her with massages and rubs, and talked to her about my future ambitions and how much I adored her. Now, I won't go into too much detail since I don't want to acquire blue balls, but that night and the next 3 days we were nonstop. I stuffed myself into every nook and cranny her lovely body had to give. I must have seen *** men in or on her at least 25 times over that time span. After those days were up, we said our final goodbyes passionately, and I traveled to my new location. She kept me up to date on everything that transpired when my now ex-fiancé returned. The day my fiancé returned was fantastic. I turned off my phone the morning she returned. As a result, when the plane landed and she called for a ride, the phone reported that it had been disconnected. She allegedly had her partner drive her home. He dropped her off and then drove away. When she arrived at the door, a strange pair, new renters, answered it, which terrified her out. I can't tell you how many times she tried to phone me, but the number was no longer in service. Experiencing some type of mental battle that she wanted to talk to me about, I was more than willing to chat with her about it, and if forgiveness was required, I was more than prepared to forgive and go on. Her only words came out of her mouth were how much she loved me. Hearing that from her hurt since I now have 4 independent films of her and the other guy in our apartment having it on. I videotaped almost 41 hours of her having intimacy with what I later discovered was her coworker during the following 8 weeks of flying to the Midwest. The trips lasted 10 weeks. She never worked late while I was away. I tried to be extra attentive every weekend, but she became more distant with each passing week. I got tired of watching this for 8 weeks, so I designed a 12-step escape strategy. Collect evidence, get her out of the way so I can carry out my plan. I booked a 2-week private getaway for us at an all-inclusive resort in Barbados. She was overjoyed.